And we are live.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pooja Bhatt. I'm Governor Kotek's Education Initiative Director. I just want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon as we have another informational session for the Early Literacy Educator Preparation Council. As a reminder, today's conversation is not a council business meeting where we make decisions. It's an information session for the council to learn more about the perspectives of Oregon educator preparation programs. And as a reminder, at our last meeting on October 18th, the council asked for an opportunity to, one, hear from other states, examples of what they've done, how their path has gone around educator preparation and literacy instruction. And the other thing that was requested at our last meeting is to hear from educator preparation programs within our own state. So those two asks were made at our last council meeting. And that was just on October 18th, I think. And so we'll have that national perspective that the council requested at our November sessions. And today what we're going to do is we're going to focus part of the part of the council's request to hear from Oregon educator preparation programs. So I really want to recognize today that we are just beginning the work of hearing from Oregon's educator preparation programs. Today's session is not going to allow us to hear from all of them. So we're starting with the educator preparation programs and institutions that are represented on the council already in some fashion. And so you'll hear from about 4 of them. And what we really have intentionally wanted to do is to start with the programs who are connected to the council to uplift their own expertise and to begin to solicit feedback about educator preparation programs and how programs feel like we should build bridges to other programs who are not represented on the council. So again, this is a starting place. We're not going to be able to hear from all programs today. We want to build bridges to other programs so that they can inform the council's work as well. And so today's meeting format is going to be a little bit different than we've had in the past. It's going to be an opportunity to hear from 4 different educator preparation programs in the state. We've tried to invite both deans as well as faculty, and we have even our own co-chairs, Susan Gardner and Rhonda Fritz, who will be participating in our panel. So we'll have the opportunity to hear from all 4 institutions with introductory remarks, and then have an opportunity to respond to some of the questions that were on the agenda before we have an opportunity for council members to provide questions. So we're really, really excited and grateful today to have this opportunity, and really wanting to center that we are all here to send our kids to make sure that they have access to strong reading and writing instruction. And when we get to the question and answer a bit later, I just want to make sure that we're going into our conversation today grounded in the community agreements that we have with one another. And Alex will put those community agreements into the chat. Most of the council has seen them already. One of the agreements that I really want to make sure that we lean into is that we're really here to learn together, again, in a way to center kids, and that we're not really here to blame, shame, or any individual institution or group of institutions. We're just trying to understand what's the landscape in Oregon, what are the experts who are on our panel think about it, and where do we go next? With that, let's get started. I want to introduce Executive Director of the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, HEC, Ben Cannon, who will be facilitating our panel discussion today. So thanks, Ben, and I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, thanks, Pooja. So Pooja's introduced this well, and I want to turn it over to our leaders of our colleges of education who are represented here today in just a minute. I want to note that the time's going to move quickly. We're only scheduled to be on until 2 o'clock, I think, and we've got a fair amount of ground to cover. So I'm going to try to keep it moving. We thought we'd begin by offering each of the 4 institutions that have been invited to participate today to introduce themselves, the folks who they've got here, and as well as talk a little bit about their program at a very general level, what you think we should know, particularly as it relates to literacy. So spending no more than about 5 minutes each, I'll turn it over to each of the 4 deans in turn. Let's start with Eastern Oregon and Dean Newman.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Dr. Rayette Newman. I am the interim dean of the College of Education at Eastern Oregon University. I have the honor and privilege of working with Dr. Fritz, one of your co-chairs on this committee, in regards to literacy and reading and the teaching of reading at Eastern Oregon University. I would say first and foremost, our programs have changed in the last few years. One of the things that we really did focus on is evidence-based instruction within our programs. Our undergraduate program, we have undergraduate programs, and we also have Masters of Arts in Teaching program. We have 4 reading evidence-based instruction courses in our undergraduate program. And within that program, there is one specific practicum class that is associated to these evidence-based instruction pieces as well. So we have courses throughout their entire junior year and their senior year that they are in program that is focused specifically on all of this work. We have 4 MAT courses as well that's focused on the evidence-based instruction. So we have a lot of courses dedicated specifically to the teaching of reading. Right now, that program doesn't specifically have a practicum related to that experience, but that's something that we are continuing to develop and hope to have that developed in the next year. So we're pretty excited about all of that work. One of the other pieces that we focus in on is with our special education program. Our special education program also takes those same 4 reading courses and has that same reading practicum that our undergraduate students have as well. We're a very comprehensive program. As probably many of you know, the NCTQ scores came out. Eastern Oregon is a leader in this. We have a score of an A and a B in our reading programs, not our reading programs, but just in our programs in general. In addition, we have the add-on programs. So we have, after you've received your teaching license, if you're interested in coming back into education, or adding an additional endorsement, we have the reading endorsement, but we also have a dyslexia certificate as well. So this is the work that we have continued to develop and do. Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to do. Oh yeah, we have a really good partnership between our reading team and our ESOL team. And so some of the work we're trying to do is figure out how to, and this is what we're proposing this year, is adding a second endorsement into our undergraduate program, not only with individuals coming out with multiple subjects and ESOL, but also having them come out with a reading endorsement. So that's the work we're doing. And that's in partnership because these 2 groups work so well together. And there's that crossover in some of that content, specifically the linguistics. So we really feel like we've got a very complex and comprehensive education programs in regards to teaching reading and how we're able to embed it throughout. So that's Eastern Oregon University, and I will let the other deans talk about their programs and then we'll answer questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Newman. Let's move west and turn it over to Dean Gardner, Oregon State University, and of course, co-chair of this council.
Thank you, Dr. Cannon. Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Gardner. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director. I'm the Dean of the College of Education at Oregon State University. And my colleague who will be joining us at 1:30 because she's teaching class is Sarah Wright, who's our Director of Licensure. I am not going to be able to speak to all the breadth and depth of our programs other than to say that literacy is a major piece of all of our 6 different teacher pathway programs that we have here at Oregon State University. We have programs in Corvallis, where I'm located. We have programs at Cascades campus in Bend, and we have several programs through our eCampus. So mostly hybrid programs. And all of those have anywhere from 4 to 6 courses focused on literacy of many different kinds, including biliteracy for our dual language and ESOL programs, as well as multiple courses in ESOL. So it is something, that we take very seriously here in the preparation that we provide for pathways to preliminary licensure. The only other thing I'll add here, and I'm sure it'll come back up again later, is that, and some of you on the council heard this before as well, that we do a lot. We have a lot to do in what may be, especially in our MAT programs, about 1.5 years that we get with some of our candidates. And so mindful of the fact that every new policy mandate, always well-intended, requires one more thing. And so how we do this is part of, I think the art and science of what we have to do as educator preparation programs is how do we make sure that all the different things that we want our new teachers to come into the classroom knowing, being able to do, understand, et cetera, whatever those particular learning outcomes are, that there's something else that often has to be displaced, or it's one more thing. So one example of that is in several of our preparation programs, we have courses now just on the EdTPA because that was something that the state mandated, because we want to make sure our students are successful with those. So how we help them navigate and understand those things. So I guess I'll just end with saying that I think it's important that we remember that we're not going to build master teachers in preliminary licensure programs. What we really need to do is think about the tools that we can provide our teacher candidates with, and then provide them on a pathway that we as a whole state can continue to provide professional development that's needed so we can continue to grow these teachers who are amazing professionals with the additional professional learning they're going to need. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Gardner, and both of you done a great job modeling a brief introduction, but a nice summary of your programming, your approach. And let's turn to Portland State University and Interim Dean Peterman.
Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon. I'm Tina Peterman. I'm the Interim Dean of Education here at Portland State University. And I won't repeat a lot of the things Dr. Gardner shared because I agree with them wholeheartedly. So we have many programs here in the College of Education at PSU. The programs that really I'm going to highlight, also I'm here with Julie Brown, who might speak more to these programs at a later date. Thank you, Dr. Brown. The Bilingual Teacher Pathway Program, we have our Inclusive Elementary Educator Program, we have licensure programs in elementary education and special education, as well as we maintain the Read Oregon program. All of those have literacy at its core and have multiple programs in practicum that focus on literacy, as well as assessment and how do we determine success in that area. So I will share that I appreciate being invited to share a little bit more, and I think we're going to have an opportunity in the panel to talk about what changes look like and how to include EPPs and making sure that we do these in a way that's really thoughtful and impactful to students. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Dean Peterman. And last but not least, we'll turn to University of Portland and Dean Watzke.
Yeah, John Watzke, Dean of the School of Education, also Dean of the Graduate School at University of Portland. I'm joined by Dr. Katie Danielson, who is our resident early childhood literacy specialist, as well as Hillary Merck, upper left tile I see. Hillary's she's a specialist in generalist elementary education, associate professor, also does all of our accreditation work as well with the state and national as well. So she has kind of a unique perspective. Just a little bit about our program. We run a robust undergraduate education major, both on the secondary side, that's double majored with arts and sciences, and then also the elementary. But our students in their first year, actually week 3 of their fall term semester, they begin venturing out in schools. And so they're going to complete about 1,200 clinical hours over 4 years during the program. That includes a full year of student teaching, opening the classroom with the students, greeting the families and students as they arrive. There's a lot of passive literacy, as I like to say, of the good, the great, and the awesome that they're going to experience over those 4 years. We certainly have specific courses dedicated to literacy. We've also taken those standards and embedded 3 of those across the entire program. We think that that's kind of an approach that we've taken for most of the sets of standards that we work with. And it provides some unique insights, I think, during the program, as well as provides an opportunity for undergraduates to work towards that reading interventionist endorsement during those undergrad years that can be added on to as a credential after certification. So that's kind of a unique piece. We have the privilege of spreading that out over 4 years. It's a bit of a longer takeoff. On the MAT side, as we've heard from our colleagues, that's about a 1.5-year program. It starts with a summer internship where we have North Portland youth on campus. And it's a kind of a mini practicum, then that full year of student teaching. It's really a challenge to fit on the elementary side 6 sets of standards. We have SEL coming on board as well. And so I think that's going to be a real, place where we want to talk across units, across providers with that very intensive MAT. And my understanding, the majority of teachers in Oregon are prepared through 1.5-year programs as well. I'll finally just say that we've been working for about 4 years in terms of, new hires. We've hired on Anna Myers, who's a reading interventionist, dyslexia specialist, and she's a assistant professor, and starting up a statewide survey right now, working with educators, kind of get kind of a needs-based assessment to start some new programming. So we are a program in evolution. I think you will see us looking a little bit different 5 years from now. We're going to absorb these changes and really work on changing both coursework and then how to take these standards and have an impact, globally across the entire program as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Wadsky. So we're going to open it up to a little bit more of a discussion now. I've got some questions that'll help guide us and hope to hear from both our deans as well as faculty who are at those schools and part of the conversation today. I'll just sort of at the outset say, in years of doing this kind of work with higher education leaders, I've noticed that we're not very good at, particularly in this kind of setting where there are multiple institutions and it's a public meeting, it can be difficult to talk about the challenges or the shortcomings, right? There's sort of an incentive to talk about what's going well or what you're excited about. I just encourage our university representatives here to also reflect on, where those challenges or growth areas or growth opportunities are as we get going in the conversation. The first question that I'll pose relates really directly to one of the core responsibilities of the council, which is to reflect on and advise in the TSPC standards, program standards for educator preparation programs as it relates to literacy. And it's something a question I've posed or wondered out loud about in the council, which is what kind of impact do those TSPC standards have on the programs that you run at your institutions? How are your programs affected by the TSP standards, and what will a change or what would a change in TSP standards mean for the way that your programs are delivered? How does that actually sort of ripple through to faculty, to ultimately to learners, and then in turn their learners as they move into the K-12 setting? So I think we can take this in any order. I'm happy to call on institutions, but also maybe begin by just looking for volunteers from any of the 4 institutions that have been invited. Yes, I see Dr. Wadsky.
Sure. I'm happy to start things off. It's interesting. I mentioned the 6 sets of standards. I think it's 6. Hillary Merck, Dr. Merck can correct me on that. But, one of the things, what we are, I would say they have great impact and they have lesser impact at times. And it depends on, do we already have a running start in that area? Do we have faculty expertise, maybe partnerships in that area as well? So it really depends on what's coming down the road and where we are. On the personnel side, we cannot kind of hire and fire according to the changing expertise and needs. So we have a real, both a burden and an opportunity to try to infuse a lot of professional development, around new standards where we don't have that expertise. I would say around dyslexia and early assessment, that has been a challenge. And it's taken us about 4.5 years to kind of get that faculty expertise through, lines that have been, we've had faculty leave and we've been able to do hires. That's also great against a backdrop of inflation, of budget cuts. It's tough time in higher ed. So, our capacity to absorb immediately is very much, is very much affected by kind of the times. And that's kind of where we are right now. So I think that with any change in standards or addition or revision, it will take time for us to ramp up, and not time like leave us alone. And we'll talk to you in 2 or 3 years. And I'm watching Anthony kind of smile there. What I'm saying is perhaps, we stage it. And so that gives us the time unique to our institution, the personnel, the expertise, the budget as well. And maybe the opportunity to do some major revision wholesale on our programs as well. It takes us about a year just to make course changes, typically in a traditional campus, with all the committees, the academic senate, that we have our larger creditor as well, not just the education creditor, but the regional as well. And so there is a kind of, timing that is really important to staging, I would suggest.
Thanks. Who else wants to speak to that?
I'd be happy to jump in. Oh,
Yeah, please, Dr. Peterman.
Every change has many layers of implementation, and all of that does have budgetary impact because it's time. That's taken, I would say, I would agree with what John said in that we have the expertise of our faculty. We happen to have a very large faculty here, so we can generally find that expertise, but that takes time, and sometimes that takes money to reallocate workload so somebody can share that expertise. But I thought it might be helpful. I could just walk you through what happens when there is a curricular change or a standards change. I'm sorry. The first thing we do is that we map it. We look at a curriculum map, and we take every standard and we see how where it fits in the coursework and the curriculum, and we see where the gaps are, where the overlapping standards are. And then the next layer of that is assessments. We don't just teach, we also assess what we teach. So we want to see so we have to look at assessments and changing that. And there's a system for how we collect assessments. So that is also influenced by that. It is quite time consuming and requires a lot of intentionality. In order to change a course title, course sequencing, any of those things, we go all the way through a series of committees here on campus, both in the department, then in the college, and then a faculty senate committee, and finally through faculty senate. So that does take usually a minimum of a year here once we get agreement on what we're going to teach and how we're going to teach it. So it is a long process. I would say that it's a good process, and we're definitely open to these standards, but it is one that is it's a big project. I'll put it there. I'll leave it there.
Thanks.
I think John and Tina so aptly summarized exactly the different levers at work that I have nothing more to add there.
I would concur with everything that's been said. I would just be very cautious again of the timing of it. Smaller institutions are a little bit more flexible and have a little bit more speed that other institutions that may not have, just based on size and the number of faculty they have to get on board. Because you can only get so much done at a meeting when everybody has their own opinion. So that is one piece that I would agree with there. Just wanted to add that.
I wonder if any of the faculty who are on the call from those institutions have reflections on the way that, standards ultimately drive what, you teach and what your learners learn in that process of change.
First, I want to say, I see that, and I think Anita had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed
Dr.
that.
Archer, were you trying to share? She frozen.
Oh, I think she's on mute.
So Ben or Anthony, I presume that when standards change, that higher education has a period of time to initiate and get all of the standards in place. It's not an option, I would presume, because you're going to be evaluating their programs on it also. But what is the usual Like, do they have a year or 2 years or one semester? Or what is the amount of time that is usually given to higher education agencies to meet the standards? Because ours is really a mandate to have this happen. It is not a suggestion. And so I'm just curious.
Tony, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I'll speak to it best with an example. When we changed in 2018, late 2018, the administrator preparation standards, we gave 2 years for the programs to submit to us a proposal of what they wanted to do differently to meet those updated standards. And then at the end of the third year, they actually had to begin preparing students toward those standards. So there is usually about a 3-year period from the time that a new standard is officially adopted by the commission to when it actually goes into effect. Now, that's not to say, though, there haven't been times where the legislature has asked us, dyslexia is a good example, where programs in TSPC, therefore, had to make sure that programs were operating. I think in that case, it wasn't much more than like a year and a half tops or so. So that's something to always consider, but then you also have to consider TSPC's capacity to really provide input and feedback on those programs. So that's another area that I hope that this group will be taking up. I know it's one of the steps to look at is, I can say that a program will get 2 years to submit a new updates and the third year to then actually implement, but we have limited capacity to really do a really deep dive into how well that updated program really does address the standards. Nor did we for so many years not have the capacity. We only had one staff on program approval to do that work. So it's always something to think. I can give you timelines, but it's really what's more important is what's in the opportunity to do that work. And then as far as follow-up, it's usually 2 years after a program has updated its offerings that we do a focus review, in which case, because we get 2 cycles of data from the institution to then be able to engage how some of those impacts are happening.
Can I just ask a follow-up question, Ben, of Anthony?
Yeah, sure.
So Anthony, when the dyslexia law was put in place, it explicitly says that the instruction should be based on the International Dyslexia Association. But then it goes and adds 2 things. It says that it must also occur in all general ed classes and all teaching of English language learners. So I wonder if that was carried out in that 1.5 years, because that would have made a major, because we want to make everything we do go with what is Oregon law, particularly. So I was curious about that, Anthony.
Hey, Tony, I want to suggest that we defer that until the end or take it follow up outside of this meeting. We did want to use the time here to keep really focused on hearing from our educator preparation program. So Anita, I think you've opened up an important sort of line of questioning around how the administrative agency, TSPC, incorporates standards and or changes standards and promulgates that to the field and follows up on it. And I think that's a really important line of inquiry, but I want to sort of shift the focus back to our EPPs now, and again invite from any of the faculty members. I think Julie, you were going to say something. Any thoughts on how you're affected by TSPC standards and what changes in TSP standards might mean at a faculty level?
Well, I think it, is what Tina was saying earlier. I'm sorry, that we look at our courses and then we look at the goals and objectives, and then we map the standards onto our existing courses and move things around. And that happens by department. So I'm in the Department of Special Education. So we'll look at our special education coursework, and C&I, curriculum instruction, will look at their literacy coursework, for example. However, what I think the missing piece is that I'd like to see more of is maybe some cross-listing, because when we spoke about the issue of our own faculty and faculty expertise. I think when we're talking about issues of literacy and dyslexia, we have expertise that's spread throughout the college that may be in different departments, where the departments can benefit from some crossover with faculty expertise, particularly I think with like the literacy, the reading specialist endorsements, when we really have to have courses that teach on teaching students with dyslexia. So, I mean, I think right now we all broadly look at them, but maybe we don't look at them with the lens of how we come together to really benefit from the faculty expertise. So I think that that's something that we can do a better job of. Because the standards, require, every new set of standards requires different expertise.
Thanks. Thanks for that. Any other faculty perspective or?
This is,
yeah, go ahead.
This is, I'm deviating. Sorry, Ben. But this is, I want to make sure we get this point in. This does affect faculty though, too. And that is just that, again, I think others spoke to this point, but we're also we try to be very aware of not creating more bottlenecks into that journey to become a teacher. That is adding additional coursework, adding more cost, and adding more time. That I call that the trifecta that kind of kills teacher education. So we are trying to, yes, how can we work across disciplines? How can we work across faculty to prepare to give those graduates a license to teach, right? But they'll continue to grow and learn as new teachers. And so that's always a challenge with any sort of change or new standards. Not that we are resistant, but we really are looking at that bottleneck too, and how to alleviate that and do that in a way that's effective, but also efficient.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll move on to a couple of other questions here before opening it up to the council members for their own questions in the final sort of 15 or 20 minutes. The next, I'll give you an option. It's really two different questions, and you can choose to answer either or both. One is, how do you recommend that we hear from all educator prep programs? We obviously have 4 of the state's programs represented here, but at the next council meeting and in subsequent work of the council, how do you recommend that we go about getting the perspective of all of Oregon's educator preparation programs? So that's sort of tactical question. Also, I mean, a couple of you alluded to this earlier, but expanded thoughts on what support you believe EPPs may need in implementing changes that come about as a result of this effort and potential standards adopted by TSPC, more in alignment with ODE's early literacy framework. What support might EPPs need in the implementation and adoption of that? Thoughts on either of those? Yeah, go ahead, Dean Newman.
One of the things, I think just an invite. I think EPPs across the state always are willing to give feedback. If you want feedback, all you have to do is send out an invite and they will show up. We are very proud of all the work that we do within each of our programs, and we love to share it. And too often we don't feel like we get that opportunity. So I would just say an open invitation to the next set of however many you want to talk to. I think you will have a great turnout within that. So it's as simple as an email and an invite. In regards to what I think what might be needed, it might be some professional development for some of our programs, just like we had to do professional development that was required for the ESOL standards. All faculty had to be trained in that. It might be something along those lines. So that's where I would start, and I would turn it over.
Yeah, Dr. Watzke.
Yeah, I would agree. I would also, I think, developing somewhat of a protocol of what are the essential questions you want answered. So, kind of we can give you what you need and what you need to hear and what you need to learn about as well. I think that if there are elements of the standards that you think might have bearing on field experience, on performance assessment, giving us a little bit of a prelude to that, that would maybe help provide more pointed content, feedback in terms of, hey, this is what we might be doing differently out in the field when our students are in classrooms, as an example. Or this may cause, a pause to think about, perhaps even restructuring certain coursework, based on, sort of at least some preliminary sets of standards. So I think that helps. A little bit of information without alarming everyone, perhaps, would be helpful. And then a protocol so that you get some standard feedback would be great. I think it could be written, but I think then invited conversations as a follow-up would really be effective.
Yeah, thanks for those suggestions. Dean Peterman.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with everything that's been shared. I also think that once the standards are developed, it would be great to have a crosswalk of the revised standards to the current TSPC standards. And I would love to see the TSPC standards. I don't want to see them just new standards added on, say leave the existing, add new. It really needs to be a holistic look at that, and then a crosswalk to see how the revisions can occur so that we can take that and then move forward.
Great, thanks. Dr. Esparza-Brown?
Now, when we talk about field work that is aligned with literacy coursework, so I think one of the questions to ask the other higher ed colleges is what kind of experiences are students getting in their clinical experiences regarding models of teachers that are teaching the science of reading and using explicit systematic instruction, because we're finding that it's really difficult to find good placements for literacy. So I'm wondering if that's, broadly, so maybe having a discussion about the fieldwork component might also be helpful.
Yeah. Thanks. Any other thoughts on that? I know we have a few, or any of these questions. I know we have a few of the other faculty who haven't spoken up yet. I just want to make sure you get the opportunity to share any of your perspective on this. That includes our co-chair. Yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Fritz. Yeah.
Thanks. I want to build a little bit on what Dr. Esparza-Brown said about looking within your own faculty for that expertise and that breaking down of silos. We are small. We're very tight-knit faculty, so that was easier for us to do, but a lot of it had to do with relationship building and looking at what each other's expertise was and how we all had common ground. Even when there were times when we were in disagreement about something, we had a common ground to start from. So I think that's a really important piece of that whole process. And like, as Dr. Newman said, it's easier in a small campus because we can be more flexible. But I think that general kernel that Dr. Esparza-Brown talked about is an important thing to really think about.
Great. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak just a few minutes. I'm Sarah Wright. I'm at Oregon State University. And I just want to really echo what Tina said. I work with undergraduate programs and graduate programs. What Tina and John said is, I think this is all great work, but just making sure that we don't just add new standards on top of the old ones and expect us to keep adding. I feel like over the years, we keep adding no more civil rights test. Now we're going to do a module. Now we do SEL. And I feel like we get a lot of really great things added to our programs, and they're wonderful. But as Tina suggested, I think that's a really important point, is to think about what are our standards now and to remove things if we need to, so that we can do this really good work, because you can only do really good work if you can focus on these things. You can't, the more and more stuff you have, the less you can do. So I just want to throw that out there. I think John mentioned that too as well.
Dean Gardner.
Thanks. And thank you, Sarah. The other thing I would like to add is, and I don't know if this is something that the TSPC could facilitate, but it seems to me there's just such amazing expertise, whether we're talking about, literacy or talking about mathematics, whatever the topic might be. And I don't know if there's always ways outside of national professional associations for all of our faculty across these different expertise areas to talk and to really, share ideas. And so, I think that those of us who are in bigger universities, it might be a little easier to have that critical mass of folks. But I don't know if that's true. It gets to the point where there's one person here with particular expertise. So if they're learning communities or affinity groups or whatever you want to call them, I wonder if there could be some benefit there too in these kind of ongoing implementation conversations.
Thanks. Well, I think we've heard a lot already, and it's been really valuable. I want to invite other members of the Early Literacy Council to raise their hand and ask questions of our EPP representatives as well. So whatever's on your mind, just being mindful, of the number of folks who we have in the room and the limited amount of time. So giving opportunity for others to ask as well. But yeah, let me just stop and see whether other members of the council have questions. Representative Wright, don't make me call on you.
It looks like Dr. Archer has her hand up.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking for the little hand raise, and I'm not able to see all the video at the same time. So yeah, go ahead, Nina. I think you'll have. There you go.
My real hand, because someone needs to teach me how to do the virtual hand. But having taught at universities, 3 different universities, including University of Oregon, I'm very cautious about us saying things like we got to be careful, we have too much to add, because this is all about children learning to read. And that is the mission of the governor, that we would ask the question, what are research-based practices, whether it's in general ed, whether it's in special ed, whether it's ESL, whether it is with dyslexia, need to be taught and guaranteed. And we can't have teachers, even in their first year, being like sort of knowledgeable. They have to be very knowledgeable. And I know this is a high mission, but we've got to keep in our mind, we have
Uh-oh. Do we all lose her? Yeah. Okay. Let's see some head notes. Okay. Hopefully her bandwidth will recover and we can come back. Dr. Watsky.
Yeah, I just want to respond. I mean, I appreciate those remarks. And I think that for many of us too, we really look at, we want to try to understand where maybe we put more emphasis in our programming as well. We do have a finite resources, finite time. And when these standards roll out, and in a core competency like literacy, we know this can be that could change and be transformative for our program. So, and we also know those early grades. We need to see this results in K3. Otherwise, we're really setting our students up for and our society up for major problems if we're not getting it right in those early grades. So I think that part of the conversation is maybe what might be taboo, and that is that we are expecting a certain emphasis in our Oregon programs. One of them might be literacy, early child literacy, and yes, we're going to incorporate all those standards. But this is maybe a time for Oregon to really look specifically at emphasis and an expectation, and I think we should be saying that if that's the case. We should be saying that if that's the case. I'll stop speaking now.
Dr. Esparza-Brown.
Well, this is a council for early literacy, but early literacy skills doesn't mean that kids that are at the secondary level have those early literacy skills. So how are we going to also address that's not part really of secondary programs, having some skills in teaching, but foundational literacy skills. I think that's something that we just have to keep there in mind. And we have to have schools that are prepared to teach kids that need those foundational skills, no matter the grade. As you know, we have a lot of immigrants coming in for many reasons, that kids come in without basic skills, and some that come from us. So I think that, I don't know where that fits, but those early literacy skills really are not just at the elementary level.
I'm just going to jump in. I absolutely agree with everything you just said, because that is something we're too focused on this little piece, but in reality, we have juniors and seniors who can't read right now.
Yeah.
We have failed. And I say this wholeheartedly as an educator. We knew a long time ago, like there's something that's not right, yet we were still moving forward because we thought that was what was best. And now that we know that something else is best, that's what we have to get on board with. We know that we have to change, and we have to do it, because we are having a whole generation that unfortunately can't read, graduating or almost graduating or not graduating at all. So what are we going to do?
Well, they can now. They can now, because we moved those standards, right? Those exits.
Right. But that's not right.
No.
So we have to fix it. And that's where I kind of go off on my little piece. I've got a first grader. This is where I go. I have a first grader. I don't have time. Like, I need to make sure this kiddo learns how to read. And when she came home last year, just guessing at words, because the book was Love Skunk and the book title was Love Stinks, but she was just cueing, and it broke my heart. And so I get on my soapbox. Tony's heard the soapbox at a TSBC meeting, and that's where this needs to be. Dr. Archer, you're absolutely correct. This is about students right now. This is about our K-12 kiddos. This is why programs we're willing to change. I think some of it just might be the reality of what we need. And here's an example. When the national accreditation standards came in, we were just told you have till this date to do it. It takes a long time for processes to come in within this state. And so we had to ask for those additional time, and we were allowed that time. And guess what happened? We all met it, but we just need that little bit of time. But for some of us, we're going to be able to accomplish this a lot sooner than others, just based on flexibility. And even, dare I say, the people that we have on staff already are some of the expertise we're going to just already tap into. Soapbox off.
Thanks.
Well, I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm a dean. I'm used to just speaking.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. You know, I do have a member of the family who is teaching, licensed teacher, and she's teaching ESL right now in a local school district. And I asked her, what what's been most formative, and she actually said that finally obtaining her reading endorsement was one of the most informative aspects of her teaching English language learners. And I think that I just go back to some of Julie's comments as well, that we know up and down the spectrum, we may be looking early now or initial teaching of reading, but I think that there's that K-12 piece that has to be there. And I'll emphasize that again, that this may be a time for Oregon to say we are expecting a shift in what we're doing, both fully in K-12. And let's be very, be very clear then if that's the case. And give us the time and space to do it, but hold us to it. Hold us to that as well.
Rep Wright, I think I saw you come off and you maybe raise your hand.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ben. First off, appreciate the presentations. Very informative. Thank you for all you do for our prospective teachers coming up. I had the opportunity to attend a conference here this last week with a national state school boards, Board of Education, and also legislators. And predominantly, I walked away with one specific thing, that we're here for kids. And regardless of our institution, regardless of our department, regardless of our legislature, regardless of politics, any of those kinds of things, we're here for kids. And it seemed to me, as I've been listening, that the other programs it took them a couple years to get the standards, bring everybody together, work closely, and make sure that they're reasonable and we can make sure that there are appropriate outcomes. And then it took another approximately 3 years to implement everything that needed to, not only in the universities but in the school system. So I think we have this cut out for us. I think I'm looking forward to this process involving everybody. But in the end, no matter what we do and no matter the speed bumps and obstacles and the resistance that we have, in the end, we're doing what is in the best interest of our kids. And if we keep that first and foremost, then everything else will fall in line. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Any other thoughts from our EPP representatives, things you want council members and staff to hear and know as they carry on with the governor's meeting, the governor's charge? Well, gosh, it's been a really good discussion. I think Pooja and other staff will do a better job than I of kind of summarizing and sharing takeaways with council members over time, I'm sure. But I'll just note a couple of things that have stood out to me from this discussion. One is that and I was very glad to hear that the standards matter, that these TSP standards really do drive programs at the institutional level. Like they are not ignored. They are real. They are meaningful. They drive the way that programs are designed and instruction within educator prep programs occurs. I also took away that changing the standards and seeing that kind of flow through to the institutions and to the classroom level takes time, right? And that is not a surprise to me because of the sort of the in some ways decentralized nature of higher education, the degree of traditionally sort of faculty autonomy and faculty engagement in curricular issues, that sort of that process is complex and time consuming. And that's not all a bad thing because part of what that generates is greater sense of ownership and buy-in on the part of the faculty who are ultimately responsible for seeing, for implementing the programs. And so I think that's an important understanding for the council to have. Heard the concern about sort of overdoing standards. I'm using, nobody said that, but it's sort of layering of standards without a consideration of sort of holistically, how are they working on it? Are we asking educator prep programs to do too much or too many different things? So that sort of desire for a kind of holistic review. And then I was surprised and pleased as my spouse is also a high school teacher who teaches foundational literacy. She's an ELL student, mostly working with immigrant students, and so I didn't expect to hear that sort of call out for the need to consider literacy, not just for literacy instruction, not just for our young children, but for children at all levels, because literacy instruction, basic literacy instruction, is going on at all levels of K-12, and that was highlighted here. So those were some of my quick takeaways. But again, it's been a really rich discussion, and appreciate folks for joining and participating. Your good questions and comments. And turn it over to Pooja for any final thoughts.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Director Cannon, and thank you, everybody, the panel, for sharing your different perspectives with us, and for the council for continuing to engage in this. I don't think anybody in this virtual space has any other intention other than to support kids' ability to learn. And I think that we're all here with that same kind of charge. And I consider myself a dot connector. So I'm an education kind of policy wonk and researcher. And what I have just recognized, over the course of my career is that everybody in this conversation has absolutely a role to support students' learning and growth. And that it is going to take all of us. It's going to take educator preparation program leaders. It's going to take faculty. It's going to take our elementary and secondary educators, school administrators, building administrators, district administrators rather. And it's going to take experts who can bring a cross-state comparison, and it's going to take state policymakers. And so what I've heard today is just really an invitation from the educator preparation program community to continue to be part of this conversation, to continue to be engaged as partners in the conversation about how we can actually move forward together. And I've heard that there is a necessity to really think about and perhaps to interrogate, how do we create the conditions for the success? How do we create the conditions for educator preparation programs to be successful, for students to be successful educators, and what's the role of state policy making in that? And so those are kind of conversations and questions that I'm going to continue to explore, and we'll invite all of you to explore with us, because it is going to take different parts of the system. We've been exploring through our several council meetings so far, where are the levers and how do we pull them in ways that are relevant to the unique context in our state, but what can we learn from other states? So I'm really looking forward to pivoting from today's conversation to both thinking through with the co-chairs, how do we bring in those additional programs based on the feedback we heard today, and then how do we learn from other states in their journey, and how much of that is relevant and how much it isn't, given our context. So just deep appreciation for all of you for continuing to engage in this conversation, and hope you have a great